Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you don't know me, my name is Mikaela Kiner. I am the CEO and co-founder of Reverb, along with Sarah, who's our other co-founder and COO. And probably many of you have been to one of these before. We've been doing these meetups since well before COVID, so a really long time at this point. And we try to come up with unique topics for folks, which I think today is pretty unique for kind of an HR or people and culture community. And we certainly could not do these without our wonderful sponsors. Those include Parker Smith and Feek, Carney Bradley Spellman. I didn't see anyone from either of those firms, but if anyone is there, feel free to give a wave. And then I know oh, sorry, Kate. Katie. I'm still looking for PBS. Sorry. So Katie is now with Parker Smith and Peak.
Yeah.
And sorry, and I'm just sorry. Well, I should start over, and we have Josh from Carney Bradley Spellman. So I'm just not connecting the faces to the brands.
All good. Hi there.
Oh my gosh. But thank you both. And those of you who know us know we only have sponsors who are people that we also trust and rely on and partner with. And so both Josh and Katie certainly fall into that bucket. And then there's a little accessibility tip. We will be recording. So just know that Kylie will share the recording as well as any resources that we mention. And you can turn on captions yourself if that's something you'd like to do. All right. Anyone have anything to share or ask before we dive in? Okay. And I'm super glad my son and his girlfriend's unicorn pillow is in the frame today. So he's 22, by the way. So that's really special. Well, I'm really excited to introduce our guest and introduce this topic. And actually, I'm not gonna, well, I'll say a few things about Dr. Mead and then she can say a little bit more about herself. And then I'll talk about kind of what we're here to talk about today. I will say Dr. Mead is one of our Reverb advisors. And so in addition to all the amazing work that she does on her own and the information that she'll be sharing with us today, we rely on her for her guidance and wisdom and are just so grateful that she is part of the broader Reverb group. But yeah, Dr. Mead, do you want to say a few words about yourself and your work?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. And I'm just excited to talk about this topic because it's just important across the lifespan of every person, especially if you work with other people, you need to be your best, whether at home or at work. And I am a naturopathic physician, so primary care physician with a focus on nutrition, lifestyle, and non-drug therapy, so lots of natural medicine. So always looking holistically at people, but also their environments. And of course, that kind of comes into place when we talk about sleep. But I also work with groups and with corporate teams as a fractional chief wellbeing officer. I offer programs that help center well-being and have leaders kind of have well-being informed kind of policies and cultures so that people can really thrive in what they do and that can come through in their final product or their services. So I guess that's a little bit about me. And I just feel, is it Carrie who is at home with a sick kid? Because I have 3 young ones and I'm always just like hoping every morning that everyone is healthy this time of year. So I totally get it. And I'm sorry your little one is not feeling well.
Yes, yes, for Emily. Yeah. Well, let me launch into this topic a little bit and kind of tell you how we got here. So I started experiencing insomnia earlier this year. And it was strange for me because I've always heard as a big driver of insomnia is stress or anxiety. And it actually started for me while I was working remote in Costa Rica. So probably the least amount of stress or anxiety I've ever had in my entire life. So it was very perplexing. And the kind of insomnia I had was where I could fall asleep fine, but I'd wake up and not be able to go to sleep until the next night. And I mean, wake up at like 1 or 2:30 in the morning and not be able to sleep until 9 or 10 the next night, which is ridiculous and very exhausting. Even though I would just get up and like start my day. Like I'd literally get up as if it was the morning and drink tea and work and read the news. I didn't know what else to do. So that was my experience, knock wood, it's a lot better now. But then what I noticed is that because I was listening for it, and I would be in different conversations, like I'm part of a CEO and business owner peer group. And I noticed there would be a lot of comments there about difficulty sleeping. And then sometimes in our own like team meetings, people would be bringing it up, right? And so it kind of came to me as a theme that I know it isn't new, but I also was wondering, is it a sign of our times, right? And I don't have to tell you guys all the stressful things that are going on in the world between, the Middle East and Ukraine and the upcoming election, right? Just a lot going on. And then a lot of change and, some good and some hard since COVID, right? And unpredictability. So it got me curious about the topic. And then we had a little debate about, well, is this a great topic for like an HR meetup, or is this something more personal? Um, but where I think we landed with the help from Kylie and the Reverb team was when we know as people practitioners that we really need to take care of ourselves because we do a lot of caretaking. And then also, with such a move to kind of help others in the workplace attend to their own wellness and well-being, that anything we can learn that, might be helpful to others, to our teams or to our peers, is hopefully something we can pass on. So we decided yes, we gave, the topic a thumbs up for the meetup, and I'm super grateful that you all have decided to join us today. So really, for those of you who have like questions or sleep trouble, I'm here representing you and asking a bunch of questions. And then Dr. Mead is our expert. I know when she and I were prepping for this, she already had so many ideas and things that I hadn't gotten even after, speaking with doctors and with my own, naturopathic folks. So it was really eye-opening. I definitely wished I had heard a lot of that before someone was like, oh, just take this, gabapentin or whatever medication that also wasn't helpful to me personally, might be helpful to others. So yeah, that's it. And those who know the format here, we are super informal. So raise your hand, come off mute, ask a question, throw something in the chat. Our goal is really to share and to, be of help. And we have plenty of room to take this conversation in different directions. So please don't be shy. And let's see, with that, I will kick us off. I guess, Dr. Mead, to start with, I think many of it, even if you've never sort of thought that much about sleep or even experienced difficulty with sleep yourself, many of us know kind of what I was saying earlier, that maybe stress and anxiety are contributors to poor sleep. So I know we're going to talk about a lot of things that lead into that, but I wonder if you could just comment on that perception, and also what might be other causes that we don't even think about or that we don't even know about.
Sure. Yeah. I think always the first thing I ask when people say they can't sleep is whether they're stressed. If there is something new that's going on, and it might not even be something that they're aware of. Have there been changes in their lives, things that are going on in the background, things that are keeping them from even falling asleep? Can be a physical stress to the body, like if you're training for an event, can be an emotional stress, can be an ideological stress, just something that we perceive as a threat to our sense of security and safety. So that's the first thing, like what's keeping you up, like what's keeping your body from entering the nervous system mode where you can rest and digest, those two things, right? And they always kind of come together. And I think too, some of it is, like you're saying, a sign of our times, right? Like we are in a culture that is just go, go, go all the time. And then we put a lot of pressure on ourselves too, to be better than we were yesterday, be better than this other person. If you spend any time at all like on social media, then there's always someone who's doing something incredible, better, and we push ourselves. And there's just like a fine line between ambition and making progress and having unattainable goals that actually start to rob us of our functionality. So stress is a big part of it, but there's so many different layers to stress, and then how we respond to stress. But often sleep is one of the first things to go and is strained if we're just in a nervous system mode that keeps us from actually resting. Yeah, so that's my little blurb, I think, on stress. But then you had asked too, are there other causes that would keep you? And there are so many, and we can go through like lists
Sure.
and lists of them. But the first thing I think about is just like taking a step back. Like, is there an environment where you can sleep, right? Like internally, of course, if you're stressed, then it's going to be hard. But externally, like I think sometimes we forget that if our physical environment is one that is a stress to our body. So if your room is too hot, or if it's too cold, or if you don't have like, if you're like a princess in the pea type person, which sometimes I can be, like if your sheets are too rough, or they're too silky, or they're too cold, or whatever it is, that might just really be that little thing that keeps you from actually resting and relaxing. Is it noisy? Are there distractions? Is it kind of still bright in your room? Like, we need it to be pretty dark for melatonin to take over and to help us actually get a restful sleep. But if you don't have like blackout shades or something and it's still bright, that could trick your body into thinking, oh, it's not time to sleep yet. So just like physical environment, temperature, sensory input, all those things can be part of it. Um, I could go on and on, but that's like a good place to start, because it's just like
Thank
internal
you.
environment and external environment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, scratching the surface of what else we might want to look into. And I also, before we, dive into those in some detail, just in the past couple of weeks, I was reading the news and I came across this term that was new to me, which was orthosomnia. And so this is the quest for perfect sleep. And as I understand, is within that quest, you can actually be causing yourself so much stress and anxiety, thinking you have to get not just good sleep, but a perfect night's sleep that that starts to actually detract from your ability to sleep and your quality of sleep. So I don't know if that resonates with anyone here, but it was new to me, and well, I thank goodness don't have that. I could see, right? I think, and especially back to like media and social media, and suddenly there's sort of this perfect version of everything, and striving for that, as we all know, is impossible. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case you're like, I think maybe we're onto something there. Well, and I'm curious. We didn't really prep for this question, but do, do sleep difficulties impact genders pretty much similar across the board, or differently?
I think it's probably more typical for women to have sleep concerns, but I don't know that I don't have numbers, shall we say. So I think it depends on the individual person. And also just, again, if we're talking about just stress alone, how someone manages stress and how they cope, right? For some people, being stressed doesn't keep them awake, but they might have other coping mechanisms that keep them from going to sleep, right? Like some people might decide, I'm stressed, so I'm going to work a ton more, right? So I'm not getting my work done. I'm going to work until 2 a.m. Well, it might not be like impacting your sleep. You might pass out at 2 a.m. because you're exhausted now, but it is keeping you from getting good sleep. So I think it depends on the person and what their go-to coping mechanisms are, and not necessarily based on gender. But I mean, I think there might be a stereotype that men can just like fall asleep and snore like a bear and, wake up like nothing happened. I definitely know there are times when my kids were really little and, every little sound in the house had me up. And then in the morning, I would look like a wreck, just exhausted. Like, did you hear so and so, to my husband? He's like, no, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So very anecdotal. Potentially men might sleep better, but I think it depends on the person and the scenario.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Um, so let's see, you talked a little bit about some things in that the environment, the comfort, the amount of light that's coming in, noise. Are there any other things in the environment that people should look for? Like if everyone's going to go now and, do a scan
Mhm.
of where they sleep, what else should they keep in mind?
There are some people who are actually very sensitive to Wi-Fi, and might not know it. And I've known people who, like, if they keep their Wi-Fi on all the time, can have this like sensory overload that you can't even really put your finger on. So that's like beyond, on a sensitivity scale. So that's something that you probably hadn't thought about. Scents as well could be something. So like in Seattle, for example, where we have very, wet winters and falls sometimes. And if you live in an old home and there's molds that grows because it grows everywhere, if you're sensitive to that, even if it's not like a perceptible scent, that could also cause problems with you kind of settling down on a sensory level. I'm thinking if you like scan the room, I think just think of like your five senses, right? So that tactile sense of what's actually touching your body. It could be pajamas too, like if you don't have the right comfy pajamas, the sheets, the temperature. I'm doing a little bit of a personal scan of my room, the lighting, the Wi-Fi. You can also, if it's just loud, if there's some people are sensitive to like the ticking of a clock or just like little things, pipes, that are going, you could also impact your environment by just putting on a different sound, like a calming sound. Like in our family, it's ocean sounds. Like as everyone goes to bed, we all put on like an ocean, recording or whatnot. And it's a good cue to the body as well. It's like, oh, the ocean sounds are on, everyone's brushing their teeth, the lights are going down, and it just kind of cues this sequence where your body does start to fall into line with shutting down, going into like more of a restorative rest and digest nervous system mode. So it can go both ways, right? Like you can actually impact that. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, I would just think of like senses and whether or not there's anything that kind of sticks out to you that is disruptive.
Yeah, I love those. I see in our notes too from when you and I talked earlier, the quality of your pillow, which literally our team was like slacking about this somehow the other day.
Yeah.
And it prompted me, by the way, to get a new pillow. And it just made such a big difference. I felt ridiculous. Like I've been talking to doctors for a year. I just ordered this pillow off Amazon and now I'm sleeping better, but
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah.
And in
And
terms of
your mattress.
oh,
Sorry, you
yeah.
mentioned pillow, but definitely your mattress too. Too soft or too hard, too hot, that kind of thing. So it might not be the sheets. It could actually even just be the mattress. So it's
Yeah,
another one. Yeah.
thank you. I'm curious. So I imagine some of us doing this scan and it's like, well, yeah, is it my blankets, my mattress, my pillow? I mean, we might not know, right? And so do you almost treat it, I'm thinking of an elimination diet, where you just switch out one thing at a time and see if that moves the needle?
Yeah. I think if there's anything that just sticks out to you right away, start there. But if you're not sure, then you can just, again, start with those like five senses and also not have another thing is like some of us have things that are related to work or hobbies or whatever lifestyle in our rooms, and you really want your room just to be for rest, right? So if you have like a desk in the corner, maybe not have it there because you may not be thinking about what's on your desk and the work you need to do, but even just having it there is like a cue to be active as opposed to be resting. So having just the things that pertain to rest could also be part of it. Yeah, so I think just being aware too of what your unconscious or subconscious cues can be, and which it's hard to do that, right? But just starting with looking around, um, what jumps out to you first, and then after that thinking, okay, what are like kind of my stretch goals for making this the most restful environment?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about food, sugar, and nutrition. I think this is going to be a hot topic. So yeah, give us some tips. Like what are some good things that we can be doing and consuming as it pertains to sleep? And then we probably sort of know generally what the bad habits are, but maybe some tips on how do you keep those in check, right? Or if you love caffeine, what should be the limit? Or when should you stop consuming caffeine so you can sleep?
That's a great idea. So everyone's sensitivity to caffeine is a little bit different. Some people can't have it at all. Some people can have it, but not past 10 in the morning or noon. Some not past, early afternoon. But I would say keeping it early in the day for sure is most helpful. Like before noon or latest before 2, depending when you go to bed. And then my biggest tip always for nutrition when it comes to sleep is protein. I think a lot of times we don't realize that as we go through the day, our blood sugar goes up and down, right? So when you eat, your blood sugar will go up a little bit depending on what you eat. If it's something with higher sugar, so if you say, I'm not going to have caffeine, I'm just going to have a cookie or a sweet or just something that'll give me a little bit of a boost, well, your blood sugar will go up, but then it'll come down again, and you'll be just kind of chasing that blood sugar high all day long. And if towards the end of the day, you're still on this up and down with blood sugar, and then you have dinner kind of early, because let's say you've decided you don't want to eat too late because you don't want to be digesting all night, you want to be better, more closer to fully digested before you go to bed. So you have like a 6 or 7 o'clock dinner, you go to bed at 10. Well, now by 2 o'clock, if you had went to bed at 10 and you didn't eat, or between 7 and 2, it's been a really long time since you ate, right? So your blood sugar might go down and you won't necessarily wake up feeling hungry, but your brain might wake you up because your brain uses only glucose for fuel. So you still need fuel to a certain extent while you're sleeping. If your blood sugar goes down, you might wake up and you might just not know why. And you might not really be hungry, but it's like you ran out of fuel for your body to keep doing what it needs to do even while you're sleeping. So protein at dinner, protein throughout the day. For sure, little snacks, nuts, seeds, meat if you eat meat, poultry, dairy, that kind of thing, just little bits throughout the day. But then if you're one who wakes up in the middle of the night often, then even an hour or two before you go to bed, something that's mostly protein can help to balance your blood sugar through the night so that you don't wake up in the middle of the night.
Okay, thank you. And Rebecca's saying it's a new one for her. So good. Glad we're imparting something new. I'm curious the last part you said about, sort of some protein toward the end of the day. Because I've also heard this thing almost like eat a spoonful of peanut butter as you're going to bed or a handful of nuts. So is that accurate, or is it more just make sure you've consumed enough protein throughout the day?
I think throughout the day is going to be your best bet. But if for whatever reason that didn't necessarily happen, or you already did and you're still waking up in the middle of the night, yeah, peanut butter is great because it's protein and fat, and it will keep your blood sugar stable. You think of like protein and fat as logs on a metabolic fire, and then sugar is more like kindling. So kindling burns fast and quickly, but log is going to burn slow and long. So you want that fat and protein to help you balance whatever sugar you've had throughout the day, and especially before you go into sleep if you're having that what you call middle insomnia, waking up in the middle of the night. So yeah, I think that could be really helpful.
Okay. I love that metaphor. Thank you. I like the logs versus the kindling. Some of us probably now know we need to invert our diets, like more logs, less kindling. I don't know. Let's talk about hormones, right? I think a lot of us again may have started hearing more about hormonal changes and whether it's menopause or something else, like things that can be disruptive to sleep. But I'd love you to do a broad brush, and if this applies to both genders, I think that would be great to hear, because we also tend to hear about this exclusively with women.
Yeah, so going into perimenopause and menopause, and there is a term called andropause, where testosterone starts to decrease in levels in men as they age too. So when hormones start to shift, you have to remember that it's not just reproductive hormones, and they don't kind of live in a vacuum in your body, right? So the things that you're doing for your nutrition definitely help to balance hormones to a certain extent. If we have more of an inflammatory type diet, so lots of like processed foods or sugars or things like that, that is going to shift our body into more of an inflammatory state and shift the balance of our hormones so that we're not getting, exactly what we need when we need it, especially when we're going into those times in our natural evolution as humans that age where hormones start to shift, right? So general lifestyle makes a big difference with that. But as you're starting to see these shifts in hormones, it's really normal for sleep to be affected as estrogen starts to go down, and same with progesterone. Then you can have sleep disturbances where you can also have hot flashes. So that is something that will definitely keep you up. And you wake up and you're soaked and your bed is soaked, and it's so annoying, and extremely disruptive. But we have to remember that hormones are processed in our digestive system. right? And sometimes, whether you're perimenopausal or still menstruating or menopausal, we have to remember that if our digestion is off, if our gut health is off, that's going to affect how our hormones are processed. So often with my patients, if they're having hot flashes, the first thing I do is look at their digestion, and especially how their liver is functioning. Because a lot of times in improving liver health, for example, because your liver is your like huge processing unit in your gut. So if it's not working as well as it should, which may or may not show up on labs, it's more something that you would notice by assessing how your body functions on a holistic level. And if it's not, and you're having hot flashes and digestive issues and these things, then treating and addressing this liver function can absolutely make a positive impact on hot flashes and also hormone health in general. So it's important to know kind of what your hormone levels are. Some people like to do testing. I think honestly, your symptoms tell you a lot about your hormone levels that, just numbers on a page might not be able to fully explain. So working with a provider who understands what the different signs of imbalances are and knows which levers to pull, which symptoms are showing way too much estrogen or way too little, or just more cortisol in managing different stressors. Because if you have high stress and you're producing more cortisol, that shifts your blood sugar balance. It also makes it so you're less likely to produce enough progesterone. And you need progesterone to balance estrogen. So that's where a lot of the hormonal imbalances come from, is your body can either help you manage stress or maintain reproductive function, like not both at the same time. Because, just think about how your body's trying to keep you safe. So you're not going to reproduce while, for example, a tiger is chasing you, right? It's like, we're going to run from this tiger. We're going to stay alive. So your body kind of picks one or the other. And if you're preferentially making that cortisol, reproductive hormones are going to be impacted, and then you'll see the symptoms from that.
Great, thank you. So not everybody may see a naturopath or have access to a naturopath. So any tips or suggestions on either what other kind of healthcare folks can support people through this? Or are there maybe a couple, you've kind of mentioned them in passing, but one or two questions that someone could ask their healthcare provider to even say, okay, is this the right person for me to be working with if I'm having some of these challenges?
Yeah. I love and have so much respect for traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncturists, because that system and lens is very holistic. So that's one, avenue you can move towards. I love also working with osteopathic doctors, because they look at very fine structural, relationships in the body and can manipulate those so that your body works better and your nervous system is more likely to stay in that rest and digest mode. So osteopathic doctors. Also, if you get a physician assistant, nurse practitioner who just has a tendency towards looking more holistically, looking more functionally. And honestly, any practitioner, any clinician who will listen to you is a good practitioner to give a chance, right? Like someone who you can explain what's going on, who asks questions about more than just the issue that you're dealing with, I think is one that you can definitely partner with on that issue or any issue. And then also just having blood work done. I think it's important to remember that there could be metabolic changes in your body and imbalances that can be impacting just the way your body functions in general and how well you're able to sleep. So if you haven't had blood work done in a while, I think it's really helpful just to make sure you're not low in iron, or your blood sugar control has been off for 3 months. Like you can test hemoglobin A1C is one thing that shows, it tests how much sugar there is on a red blood cells. Red blood cells live for 3 months. So when you test the hemoglobin A1C, it shows you what your blood sugar control has been over the life cycle of a red blood cell. So even if your fasting blood sugar is normal and it's fine, if your hemoglobin A1C is high, it means you haven't been generally processing and managing blood sugar well. So little things like that. can be helpful if someone is just looking from that lens of, okay, what's the bigger picture here? Who is it that I'm treating as opposed to which symptoms am I treating?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So you just touched on blood work. Talk to us a little bit about movement. What kinds and levels of activity are, should we be keeping in mind, I guess, that are going to be most helpful when it comes to sleep?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even like before movement, I would just say being outdoors, right? Because movement, I think, is best outdoors if you can swing it, even if it's just for a few minutes, even if it's just like walking to the mailbox and coming back, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, because we have so many dark months. um our bodies live on circadian rhythms, right? Like we follow light and dark. So if we're just like exhausted through the winter, is because it is so dark, and we live so far north that it's hard to get enough sunlight through the day. And if your body isn't signaled like, okay, it is daytime, there's sunlight, there's actual sun rays hitting your eyeballs so that you can make serotonin and vitamin D and all these things, then your hormone balance can be off, right? Like you don't get, in the morning, you're supposed to get sun exposure, and then it'll kind of ramp up your thyroid function, because thyroid is the master of your metabolism. It'll increase your cortisol because that's going to get you out of bed. That's totally normal. And then as it gets darker throughout the day, then you should start seeing the switch of lower cortisol, lower thyroid function, and higher melatonin. But I see a lot of people who, if you were to test their hormones, we look at it and it's like, oh, your cortisol is high at night and low in the morning. So you're like exhausted in the morning, and then at night you're like wired and zippy, and it's really hard to sleep if that's what your hormones are doing. So before movement, I would say just making sure that you're following the natural life cycles and getting some early morning or early in the day sun exposure, being outside, getting fresh air. And then I don't think that there is necessarily a magic bullet for movement. I think the most important thing is that you move your body in a way that feels good for your body, and that you do so consistently. I think that's the most important thing, is that you have a routine where you move your body. Some people like to stretch, some people like high intensity impact training, some people like running, and it doesn't really matter as long as it's like 20 to, I'd say, 15 to 30 minutes a day. The American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes a week. So on average, if you can get, what is that, 30 minutes a day, that does a great job, 5 days a week, something like that. That's kind of what you need for your heart health. But I think it's also helpful for the body to be in tune with those circadian rhythms. We are meant to like get up in the morning. Just think about like before computer work, right? Like we're supposed to like have some sunshine, get up in the morning and move our bodies to work. That was what work was like up until the modern ages. You get up, you work, and then you rest, right? But now I think we can have more sedentary lifestyles, so our bodies don't have those cues to best manage what would be our natural rhythms. So there's no specific exercise. I think just what works for you, what you like, what you enjoy, maybe even doing it with people you enjoy, even if it's a little bit of time or a little thing. I think it makes a huge difference. And it, again, signals to your body that this is daytime, reduces inflammation through the body, reduces stress, helps to balance hormones. So it has so many like metabolic benefits. But the most important thing to be consistent is that you like it and it works for you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. And I like the flexibility, and it's not this rigid thing if you have to do a certain amount every day at the same time, because I know that's so easy to get off track, and then people feel like they failed and they just they just kind of like bag it, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to segue, I mean, just a tiny bit on your point. Many of us I know are Greater Seattle, so yeah, what can we do to get some daylight, or whether it's like the sad lights or the sunrise alarm lamp things? Like, what are some ways we can get light during the Seattle winter? Because it is hard, as you know.
It is hard. All those things that you mentioned are great. I think having that like daylight alarm clock thing can be really nice during those dark months. Sad lights are incredible. for mood in general and like metabolism too, like we're just not meant to be in the dark for 6, 8 months a year. So just kind of pulsing that, turning the light on if you don't have the one that's an alarm clock in the morning as you're getting ready, just having it mimic a sunrise for you can help a ton. Also just going outside, right? Even if it's still cloudy, just go outside. There's still some sun somewhere and your body still responds to it. And it'll help to make, serotonin, it'll help to make vitamin D, help your body process vitamin D. And I highly recommend having vitamin D levels checked. Because I want to guarantee you that most of us are pretty low. I just saw a level today, that lower range of the normal is 30. It's like 30 to 100 is normal. I had someone last week who I saw who we've been supplementing for, I don't know, like 6 months or something. And she was like above the range. She was like at 108. I'm like, you're good. This is going to be a good winter for you. You can tone it way back. You're going to be fine. Just go outside and you'll be fine. But then I saw another level today. It was 6, right? Like the lower end of the range is 30 and this person's at 6. And that is super common because you can't really get it 10 through food. And if you don't go outside much, or if your body isn't metabolizing it well, you have to remember that vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin and hormone. So if you're not metabolizing fats well, which happens again in the liver, our favorite organ, then you're not going to be able to use vitamin D very well, even if you are supplementing with it, right? So another, like, thinking about how these things are connected, I think is really important, but I would recommend having vitamin D levels checked. And then supplementing based on what your provider, recommends for you through the winter for sure.
Okay, that's great. And I'll just call out, people are putting some great information in the chat. So we have the best bed pillows, and then also a sunrise clock, which I know I had a great one for a while and then it just stopped working. So I think I might have to grab that one. Talk to us about, what are some restorative activities? This was something that you had shared with me earlier also.
Yeah. I love this very simple, like just deep breathing. There's something somehow magical about just doing a box breath, right? Like where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. It's almost like the world is anew once you've done that 3 times. Okay, you kind of reset your body. And I think you have to remember that your external environment gives you cues about whether or not you're safe, right? But you can also impact what you are telling your body. So if we're like not breathing and we're like at our desk or having conversations and we're like just holding our breath, you're telling your body like we are not safe. We can't even breathe, So if you were to stop consciously and just do this slow breath, then you're telling your body, oh, we're fine. We can breathe deeply, we can hold it, it's like we're totally fine. And then your nervous system can kind of follow suit. So just making a practice out of if you catch yourself doing just a quick breathing exercise, yoga, I really love yoga. Yin yoga or restorative yoga is so lovely. You can do it before bedtime, and that can also just be, even it's like 5 minutes or something like that. Just like a way to signal to your body, like we are resting now. We've done the whole thing today. It's time to rest. Okay. We've done it all. It's done. Now just like move that arm, move that leg, squish the things around, give yourself a hug basically at the end of the night. So I love yoga. I love just breathing or just resting. I think we forget that you don't have to rest doesn't necessarily equal sleep, right? Like sometimes we're so tired, but we're not ready to sleep. It's okay to rest during those times, and rest looks different for different people. You might just want to read a book. You might just want to be with people that you love or be completely by yourself. You might want to have some people like different scents, like I'm talking a lot about senses, but I think there's like lavender, for example. One of the things I'll recommend sometimes is to take lavender essential oil and put it on like a cotton ball and then stick it in between your pillowcase and your face, like under the pillowcase, just where you can smell it. And it relaxes your nervous system, right? Like it puts you to sleep. Some people don't like the smell of lavender, but if you have like a relaxing scent, then that too can be part of like your deep breathing practice. But I think just resting. If you like to knit or crochet, some people just love that. It's active, but it's passive, right? So everyone has their thing that just puts them in a state of feeling safe and secure. So just think about that thing that makes you feel like you're not on a treadmill. No one is expecting anything from you. You can just be. Make a practice of doing a little bit of that every day. And that again will signal to your body that yes, we don't have to have all the balls in the hair all the time. The weight of the world isn't entirely on our shoulders. We can rest.
Those are great things. I like the lavender cotton ball. I love lavender. I'm definitely going to try it. And Lindsay threw in a little diagram of the box breathing that we'll also include on our Notion page when we send out a summary. I want to pause. Yeah, I mean, I really want to pause for questions. I think you and I covered, at a high level, a lot of the things that we wanted to. So, yeah, any other like specific or you want to dig into something that was said? Anybody?
Question. You said I wrote down your hormones are processed in your digestive system. I've never heard that before.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah. It is one of my favorite things to know, actually, because it helps me with every single patient. So let's start with just your thyroid, right? So a lot of times when you have blood work done, you'll have your thyroid check, and it's usually thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH. You usually see that. Well, thyroid stimulating hormone is produced in your brain, and it does exactly that. Your brain tells your hormone, your thyroid to work. It stimulates your thyroid. And your thyroid then will make a hormone called T4, okay? So T4 now is produced by the thyroid, but it's not what goes to all your cells and works. It has to be converted to T3. So T3 is your active thyroid hormone. That's what goes into all of the cells and does what it's supposed to do so your metabolism can go. It's the key. Well, you cannot turn T4 into T3 unless your liver works. It is converted in the liver. So that's one thing. So when there are lots of people with hypothyroidism, depression, digestive issues like constipation, things like that. All of those are linked to low thyroid function. And a lot of times it's because that this conversion of T4 and T3 isn't happening because the liver isn't working as properly as it should. And that might be like a greater issue for the entire digestive tract. So that's one. Same, your cholesterol is stored in and processed in your liver. And cholesterol is what makes a lot of your hormones. So you can't make progesterone without cholesterol. You can't make cortisol without cholesterol. Like you need these fats to make hormones. And this is also happening in your liver. I'm trying to think of which other ones. Cortisol. Yeah, and anytime too, if you're, for example, there's like a triad of, let's say, of excellence, where like your thyroid function, your reproductive hormone function, and your like adrenal function, shall we say, are all in this like triune harmony of love and functionality. So if your thyroid is off, your reproductive hormone function is going to be off too. If your stress hormones are high, it's going to affect your reproductive health. It's going to affect your metabolic health and your thyroid. So a lot of times I see people with just like fatigue, right? So it's like, where did this fatigue come from? Or, signs of other hormone imbalances. It's like, okay, what's been going on in your life? Where is this coming from? For some people, it's just like, oh, I've been working so much. I'm really, really busy. I haven't been eating as well. So it's more like this digestive piece and just like stress on the body. So let's focus on that and helping your body manage stress better. Then even if their thyroid is off, I don't really have to treat it directly, because if we can get this stress hormone overproduction aspect down to normal, then the thyroid will come back into this triune harmony love cycle without me doing anything about it. And same with like the reproductive hormones. It's like, oh, my, if the reproductive hormones are off, maybe the very heavy periods or painful periods or perimenopausal symptoms, hot flashes, all these things. And then we find out that they've been having lots of metabolic issues, lots of fatigue, depression, things like this. It's like, okay, let's look at your thyroid before, going downstream to what you're noticing more is these other hormonal imbalances. And sometimes that's what we need to treat. So you have to figure out, where did it come from? Yes, these are the symptoms we're seeing now, but where did it actually come from? And if we treat that thing, will the issues downstream improve? And often they do, but you just have to understand that all these things are connected. And if you find and address that root cause of an imbalance, then everything else seems to rectify itself. So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
That is great. Thank you. Other questions, anyone? I did the 7 seconds of awkward silence, so usually that's what it takes. I want to share, and Dr. Mead, feel free to say more about these. So I know when we send out the recording and the information, there are a couple of resources we're going to include. So one is Dr. Mead is offering us her program, which is 30 days of sleep hygiene, which I know for one, I will be participating in. There's a Revive Her Women's Retreat in October that Dr. Mead is co-facilitating. And then Reel 11, it's our Time Wellness Summit for women 40 plus. And I'm actually not as familiar with that one, but Dr. Mead, do you want to just comment on any of those?
Sure. So I'm happy to give you guys access to this like self-directed little mini course called 30 Days to Better Sleep or something like that. So it talks about some things that you could do. There's some natural medicines on there that explains how they work and ways you can explore them. They are not prescribing anything for you. It is meant to be educational. And it just gives you about 30 days to pay attention to your environment and develop like a sleep hygiene routine that can help you get better sleep overall over time if it's something that you're struggling with. So definitely check it out. Let me know if you have questions. And the other one is a Reviver. I'm excited about it. Women's Retreat. This is, I think, my 6th. And it's kind of born out of this. I really needed a break. I needed just like a chunk of like 4 hours to myself to take care of myself a few years ago. So I was like, I'm sure other people need that, like where you don't have a full weekend to go away. You can't get away from really anything for too long, but you have a half day on a Saturday several weeks from now. So Lola McCann, the women's executive leadership coach, is going to be co-facilitating the event, and we'll have restorative yoga and a sound bath. I'm so excited. That's another thing, sound baths. She plays these bowls, and I mean, almost immediately you're like so relaxed and almost asleep. So anyway, that might be something you can get into if you're having difficulty sleeping, is to just start frequenting some sound baths or going to a studio that has sound baths as part of their yoga. If you do that, or just finding a sound and vibrational therapist, and it will have Timatics who's doing that. I'll be talking about hormones, since it's just an important topic and something that I think a lot of women don't get educated on. And then when there are shifts in hormones, there aren't a lot of answers. It's like, here, take more hormones since your hormones are out of balance. Oh my gosh. No, or yes, but why is this happening, and what is it going to do to my body, and how long? There's not enough information. So I'll be talking about that, and I'm excited to answer questions too. And then Lola is going to be training on how to communicate like a coach, and I'm can't wait to kind of take notes, because I think just knowing, and I think a lot of you might be coaches or have coaching expertise, but I think when people know how to communicate properly, it relieves a lot of stress in the body, or in your life, because your signals aren't getting crossed. So we're doing that on October 19th at the Edmonds waterfront. So it's like this beautiful room right in the water, and I think it's going to be just a beautiful experience, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'd invite anyone who thinks that sounds lovely to come and join us. And the next is a virtual summit. It's an all-day summit that you can come for part of the day or for the full day. And it's really focused on women 40 plus. And so we'll be talking about hormones. My segment is at 1 o'clock on food as medicine. So we'll be talking a little bit more about digestion and the connection that digestion and food and even different herbs and therapeutic foods can make on your body. So yeah, those are the 3 things I was sharing. And I'd love, if you have questions, please let me know. And Kylie, I think, asked a question about favorite late night protein snacks, since we're talking about food as medicine. And I really do like nuts. Yeah, nuts and seeds and peanut butter, or just like if we have like meat, whatever protein we have for dinner, I'll just have a little bit more of that if I need it. So ground turkey or like a salmon patty or something like that. But really, or just like a Greek yogurt too can be great because those are, really high in protein. But yeah, anything that will, make sure you make it through that, blood sugar slump in the night, I think works just fine. And that you like too, that you can look forward to. Or like my son likes peanut butter on a graham cracker, and that's just like so, I don't know, comforting. So those are some of my favorites.
That sounds so good. I think probably after all of us being told, don't eat after dinner, don't snack after dinner. It's just really inviting to be told to have a really nice high protein snack before we go to bed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. There's a lot of lovely, comments and appreciation. Obviously, like I said, we're going to share resources. I will also just mention this is our last meetup of 2024. Does not mean it's the last time we'll be seeing each other, most of us, but yeah, thanks to those who are joining, whether it's your first time or whether it's your, 60th time or however long we've been doing this. We really love that we've been able to build this community and just get to know people and hopefully share a lot of good and interesting information. And again, I really want to thank Katie for sponsoring us from very, very early on and spending so much time with us. And then also Josh, who had to hop off a little bit early. So yeah, that's a wrap. I think Dr. Mead and I can stay on for another minute or two in case anyone wants to hang out with a question. Otherwise, thank you. And big thanks, Kylie, for organizing us and keeping us on track for this event.